The August heat in Phoenix, Arizona made the asphalt shimmer like water. Jake Miller stood on his front porch, arms crossed over his chest, the leather vest with its distinctive patch catching the late afternoon sun. At 42, his weathered face told stories most people wouldn't want to hear. The roar of motorcycles echoed down Cactus Road as his brothers rode past. But Jake barely noticed. His mind was somewhere else entirely. Inside the two-story house, chaos reigned. His twin daughters, Emma and Lily, hadn't had a full night's sleep in 3 months. At just 6 years old, they woke up screaming almost every night, drenched in sweat, crying about shadows and voices. Doctors found nothing wrong. Sleep specialists suggested medication. Child psychologists talked about trauma from losing their mother 2 years ago in that car accident on Interstate 10. Jake ran his hand through his graying beard. He was a man who'd faced down rival gangs, survived knife fights, and built a reputation that made grown men step aside when he walked into a room. But watching his little girls suffer broke something inside him that no amount of toughness could fix. The house next door had been empty for 6 months. The for rent sign finally came down last week. Jake hadn't paid much attention until he saw her moving boxes on Tuesday morning. A woman, maybe mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, struggling with a mattress twice her size. She was alone. No moving truck. No husband. Just an old Toyota Corolla packed to the ceiling and determination written across her face. His daughters were at school when she moved in, thank God. The last thing he needed was them getting attached to another person who might disappear from their lives. After their mother died, everyone slowly faded away. Friends stopped calling. Family members moved on. It was just him and the girls now, trapped in a cycle of sleepless nights and exhausted days. That evening, as the sky turned orange and purple over the desert mountains, Jake heard it start again. The whimpering from upstairs, then the crying, then the screaming that made his blood run cold every single time. He took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into their shared bedroom. Emma was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face, pointing at the corner of the room. Lily was curled into a ball, hands over her ears, rocking back and forth. "They're here again, Daddy," Emma sobbed. "The shadow people. They're so loud." Jake knelt beside their beds, pulling both girls into his arms. "There's nobody here, sweethearts. Daddy checked everywhere. You're safe. I promise you're safe." But they weren't. Not really. Something was terrorizing his daughters, and he was powerless to stop it. He'd faced enemies he could fight, but how do you fight shadows that only children can see? How do you punch fear itself? He stayed with them for 2 hours, until exhaustion finally claimed them around 9 p.m. Their small bodies went limp against his chest, breathing shallow and uneven. He carefully laid them back on their pillows, brushing hair from their foreheads. Dark circles under their eyes made them look older than 6. It wasn't fair. Nothing about this was fair. Downstairs, Jake poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and collapsed on the couch. The television played, but he wasn't watching. His phone showed messages from his club brothers asking if he was coming to the meeting tomorrow night. He ignored them. The club had been patient, but patience was wearing thin. He was missing runs, skipping meetings, absent from the life he'd known for 20 years. A knock at the door startled him. It was nearly 11 p.m. Nobody knocked at Jake Miller's door uninvited, especially not this late. His hand instinctively went to the knife he kept on his belt as he approached the door. Through the peephole, he saw her, the new neighbor. She was wearing a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, hair down now, falling past her shoulders. She looked nervous, shifting her weight from foot to foot, clutching something in her hands. Jake opened the door just wide enough to fill the frame. "Yeah?" She looked up at him, and he saw her eyes widen slightly at his size, at the vest, at the tattoos covering his arms. But she didn't step back. "Hi, I'm Sarah. Sarah Chun. I just moved in next door. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I heard crying earlier. The walls are thin and I heard children crying. Are they okay?" Jake's jaw tightened. The last thing he needed was some nosy neighbor getting involved in his business. "They're fine. Thanks for your concern." He started to close the door, but Sarah put her hand up. "Please, I don't mean to intrude. I'm a pediatric sleep therapist. I've worked with children for 12 years. If there's something I can help with, I'd like to try. Jake stared at her. A sleep therapist. Of course. He dragged his daughters to every kind of doctor in Phoenix. What made this woman think she could do anything different? Look, lady, we've seen specialists. Real doctors. We don't need help. Sarah's expression shifted. The nervous uncertainty vanished, replaced by something harder. I heard those screams. That wasn't just a nightmare. Those children are terrified. I know because I spent 3 years working with trauma cases at Phoenix Children's Hospital before I went into private practice. Whatever you're doing isn't working. The words hit like a punch. Jake felt anger surge through his chest. You don't know anything about my family. You don't know what we've been through. You're right. I don't. But I know what prolonged sleep deprivation does to children. I know what happens when trauma goes untreated. And I know that pride kills more people than it saves. Jake wanted to slam the door in her face. He wanted to tell her to mind her own damn business and stay on her side of the property line. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the desperation that had been building for 3 months. Maybe it was the way she stood her ground despite knowing exactly who and what he was. Why do you care? Jake asked quietly. You don't even know us. Sarah looked down at her hands. She was holding a small blue notebook. Because 6 years ago, my daughter stopped sleeping too. She was 7. She'd see things, hear things that nobody else could. Every doctor told me it was just childhood anxiety. Prescribed pills that turned her into a zombie. I almost lost her. What happened? I finally listened. Really listened. Turned out our apartment had a carbon monoxide leak. Slow, undetectable without proper equipment. It was causing hallucinations, night terrors, all of it. By the time I figured it out, we'd been breathing poison for 8 months. Jake felt something shift in his chest. Jesus. The landlord had ignored complaints from other tenants for over a year. After we moved out, I changed careers. Couldn't go back to my corporate job knowing what I knew. So I became a specialist. I help families figure out what's really happening when children can't sleep. Jake leaned against the doorframe. His girls were upstairs, temporarily at peace, but he knew it wouldn't last. In a few hours, they'd wake up screaming again, and the cycle would continue. My daughters lost their mother 2 years ago. Car accident. Maybe it's just grief. Maybe, Sarah said. Or maybe it's something else. Environmental factors. Audio frequencies humans can't consciously hear. Electromagnetic fields from wiring or appliances. Even pest infestations in walls. I've seen dozens of cases where the answer wasn't psychological at all. Jake was silent for a long moment. The desert night air was cooling down, bringing some relief from the day's heat. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Normal suburban sounds. But nothing about his life felt normal anymore. What would you need to do? He asked. Sarah's eyes lit up with cautious hope. I'd need to spend time in their room. Observe the environment. Talk to them if they're comfortable. Check for anything that might be triggering the episodes. It's non-invasive. No medications. No therapy sessions. Just investigation. Jake thought about his club brothers. About what they'd say if they knew he was letting some stranger into his home. Thought about his reputation, carefully built over 2 decades. Thought about all the walls he'd constructed to keep the world at a distance. Then he thought about Emma pointing at empty corners. Lily covering her ears against sounds only she could hear. The way they flinched now when darkness fell. The way they clung to him with a desperation that made his heart ache. Tomorrow night, Jake said. After I get them from school. You can come by around 7. Sarah nodded, relief washing over her face. Thank you. I know trusting a stranger isn't easy, especially for someone like you. Someone like me? Jake's voice had an edge. Someone who's used to handling things alone. Someone who's built walls so high that asking for help feels like weakness. Jake's expression hardened. You don't know me. No, Sarah agreed. But I know what loss does to people. I know what it's like to watch your child suffer and feel powerless. And I know that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let someone help. The next evening arrived with the kind of tension that made Jake's skin crawl. He'd spent the entire day second-guessing his decision. What was he thinking? Letting a complete stranger into his home. into his daughter's lives? But when he picked up Emma and Lily from Desert Vista Elementary, saw their exhausted faces and hollow eyes, he knew he had to try something different. Sarah arrived at 7 sharp, carrying a large black duffel bag and that same blue notebook. She'd changed into professional clothes, dark slacks and a button-down shirt, like she was trying to look less threatening. Jake almost laughed, as if clothes could change what people saw when they looked at the leather-clad biker standing in the doorway. The girls were in the living room, picking at chicken nuggets they had no appetite for. When Sarah walked in, they both froze. Emma grabbed her sister's hand instinctively. Sarah knelt down slowly, making herself smaller, less intimidating. "Hi there. My name is Sarah. I live right next door in that house with the blue mailbox. I heard you've been having trouble sleeping, and I thought maybe I could help figure out why." Lily buried her face in Emma's shoulder. Emma stared at Sarah with those 2 old eyes. "Are you a doctor?" "Because doctors don't help. They just give us medicine that makes us feel weird." "No medicine," Sarah promised. "I just want to look at your room and see if there's anything bothering you that maybe the grown-ups haven't noticed yet. Sometimes kids can hear or see things that adults miss." "Like the shadow people?" Emma whispered. Sarah didn't dismiss it. She didn't laugh or exchange that knowing look with Jake that said she thought they were making it up. Instead, she nodded seriously. "Tell me about the shadow people." For the next hour, Sarah sat on the floor with the girls while they explained. The shadows appeared around 8:30 every night. They moved across the walls. They made sounds like whispers but angry. They got closer and closer until the girls couldn't breathe. Emma drew pictures in Sarah's notebook while Lily acted out how the shadows moved. Jake watched from the doorway, arms crossed, ready to intervene if this went sideways. But Sarah was different from every other professional they'd seen. She listened, really listened, wrote everything down, asked questions that actually made sense. "Can I see your room now?" Sarah asked gently. The girls led her upstairs, Jake following close behind. Their bedroom was exactly how he'd left it that morning. 2 twin beds with pink comforters, posters of horses and cartoon characters, a night light shaped like a moon. Everything a 6-year-old's room should have. Sarah set her duffel bag on the floor and pulled out equipment Jake didn't recognize. A device that looked like a complicated thermometer. Another with a small screen and antenna. She walked slowly around the room, checking corners, outlets, the closet, under the beds. Then she stopped at the west wall, the one the room shared with the house next door. Her house. She pressed her ear against the wall, then checked one of her devices. Her expression changed. Jake saw it immediately. She'd found something. "Mr. Miller, can I see your attic access?" Jake pointed to the hallway ceiling panel. Sarah pulled over a chair and climbed up, flashlight in hand. She was up there for 10 minutes. When she came down, her face was grim. "We need to talk. Alone." Jake sent the girls to watch TV downstairs and led Sarah to his bedroom at the other end of the hall. She closed the door behind them. "Your house has a major rodent infestation in the walls. Rats? Probably dozens of them. They're most active at dusk, which explains the 8:30 timing. The scratching and movement the girls are seeing as shadows. That's the rats moving through the wall cavities. The whispers they're hearing are high-frequency vocalizations. Children can hear frequencies adults typically can't." Jake felt his stomach drop. Rats. 3 months of terror, countless doctor visits, his daughter's traumatized, and it was rats in the walls. "But there's more," Sarah continued. "The previous owners did a renovation about 3 years ago. I can see where they closed up walls without proper pest control. There's also faulty electrical wiring running through those same walls. It's creating an electromagnetic field that's likely causing headaches, anxiety, and sleep disturbance. The combination is toxic, especially for children." Jake sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands. How did nobody catch this? Sarah sat beside him, maintaining careful distance. Because nobody was looking for it. Everyone assumed it was psychological. Grief, trauma, nightmares. Sometimes the answer isn't in the mind. It's in the walls. If you've been following this story and rooting for these girls to finally get some peace, take a moment and subscribe to the channel. Because what happens next changes everything for this family, and you won't want to miss it. Jake looked up at Sarah, something breaking behind his eyes. Fix it. Whatever it costs. Just fix it. Sarah pulled out her phone. I know a contractor who specializes in this. He's worked with me before on similar cases. But Jake, this is extensive work. We're talking about opening walls, complete pest elimination, rewiring sections of your electrical system. It's going to be expensive and take at least 2 weeks. I don't care about the money. Jake's voice was raw. I just want my daughters to sleep. The contractor, a man named Roberto Vasquez, arrived the next morning. He confirmed everything Sarah had found and worse. The infestation extended through most of the shared wall and into the attic. The wiring was a fire hazard waiting to happen. Jake would need to take the girls somewhere else while the work was done. That's when Sarah made an offer that surprised everyone, including herself. They can stay with me. I have 2 spare bedrooms. It's temporary, just until the work. Jake immediately shook his head. No, we've imposed enough. But Sarah stood firm, that same steel he'd seen the first night returning to her voice. Jake, those girls need stable sleep immediately. Every night this continues causes more damage. I have the space. I work from home. And honestly, after living alone for 3 years since my daughter went to college, I could use the company. Jake wanted to refuse. Every instinct told him to handle this himself, to keep his family's business private, to maintain the distance he'd carefully constructed. But when Emma and Lily came home from school that afternoon and he told them about the rats in the walls, saw the relief flood their faces when they realized the shadow people were real and could be gotten rid of, he knew what he had to do. They moved into Sarah's house that evening. Her home was smaller but immaculate. Clean lines, comfortable furniture, walls painted in soft colors that made everything feel peaceful. The guest bedrooms had actual beds with fresh sheets that smelled like lavender. She'd put out towels and set up a small bookshelf with children's books she'd kept from when her daughter was young. That first night, Jake sat in Sarah's living room while the girls got ready for bed, feeling completely out of place. The sounds of construction next door had already started. Hammers, saws, men shouting instructions. Roberto worked fast. Sarah brought him coffee without asking. They sat in silence for a while, just listening to the girls laughing upstairs as they explored their temporary rooms. When was the last time you heard them laugh like that? Sarah asked quietly. Jake had to think about it. Months. Maybe longer. The night passed without incident. No screaming. No crying. When Jake checked on them at midnight, both girls were sleeping deeply, peacefully. Their small faces relaxed in a way he hadn't seen since before their mother died. He stood in the doorway for 20 minutes, just watching them breathe, feeling something tight in his chest finally begin to loosen. Over the next week, a routine developed. Jake would leave for work at the auto shop he co-owned with his club, come back for lunch to check on everyone, then return in the evening. Sarah worked from her home office, conducting virtual sessions with clients while keeping an eye on the girls. She made them breakfast, helped with homework, read them stories. Emma started smiling again. Really smiling. Lily's nightmares disappeared completely. They slept through entire nights, woke up with energy, played like normal 6-year-olds should play. Jake watched Sarah with his daughters and saw something he hadn't expected. She wasn't trying to replace their mother. She was just being present, patient, kind. She taught them to bake cookies, showed them how to plant herbs in small pots for her kitchen windowsill, let them paint their nails with sparkly polish while they watched animated movies on Saturday morning. And somewhere in the middle of all this, Jake realized he was watching Sarah for different reasons. The way she laughed at Emma's terrible jokes, how she braided Lily's hair with practiced fingers, the strength in her voice when she told them stories about her own daughter, about being a single mother who'd fought through hard times. One evening, after the girls were asleep, Jake found Sarah sitting on her back porch, staring up at the desert stars. He brought 2 beers and sat beside her. "Thank you," he said, "for everything. I don't know how to repay you." Sarah turned to look at him, really look at him, past the leather and tattoos and reputation. "You already have. You trusted me. You let me help. Do you know how hard that must have been for someone like you?" "Someone like me," Jake repeated, but this time without the edge. Someone strong enough to admit they needed help. That's rare, Jake. Especially in your world. My world, Jake said slowly, is changing. Had to change. For them. Sarah smiled. Good. Because they deserve a father who puts them first. And you deserve to not carry everything alone. 2 weeks later, Roberto called Jake with the news. The house was finished. Every wall had been inspected, sealed, and repainted. The electrical system was completely rewired and up to code. The pest control company had done 3 treatments and guaranteed the infestation was eliminated. The house was safe. Jake stood in Sarah's kitchen, phone in hand, and felt an unexpected emptiness. He should have been relieved, excited to get back to his own space, his own life. Instead, he felt like he was about to lose something precious. The girls took the news differently than he expected. When he told them they could go home, Emma's face fell. Lily started crying. But I like it here, Lily sobbed. Can't we stay longer? Sarah knelt down beside them, brushing tears from Lily's cheeks. Your dad worked really hard to make your house safe and perfect for you. Don't you want to see it? I bet it looks amazing now. But what if the shadow people come back? Emma asked, fear creeping into her voice. They won't, Sarah promised. Your dad made sure of it. And besides, I'm right next door. If you ever get scared, you can always come knock on my door. Anytime, day or night. Jake watched this exchange, something shifting fundamentally in his chest. He'd spent 2 years building walls, keeping people out, protecting his daughters from more loss by ensuring they never got close to anyone again. But isolation hadn't protected them. It had just made them smaller, more afraid, more alone. That evening, they moved back home. The house smelled like fresh paint and cleaning supplies. The walls were pristine white, waiting to be decorated again. Roberto had done incredible work. But more than that, the house felt different. Lighter, like something dark had been lifted away. The girls ran through the rooms, exclaiming over every detail. Their bedroom had been completely transformed. New drywall, new paint in a soft blue they'd chosen themselves, new carpet that felt plush under their feet. Jake had bought them new bedding too, let them pick out comforters covered in stars and moons. That night, bedtime came with the usual resistance but none of the terror. Jake tucked them in, read them a story about brave princesses and friendly dragons, kissed their foreheads. Emma grabbed his hand before he could leave. Daddy, I like Miss Sarah. She's nice to us. Yeah, she is, Jake agreed. Do you think she's lonely next door all by herself? Lily asked, her voice small. Jake thought about Sarah's smile when the girls were around, how her whole house seemed brighter with their presence. The way she'd looked when he'd packed up their things that morning, like she was losing something too. Maybe a little bit, Jake admitted. We should invite her for dinner tomorrow, Emma decided with 6-year-old certainty. So she's not lonely. Jake smiled. That's a good idea, sweetheart. The girls fell asleep within 20 minutes. No crying, no screaming, just peaceful, deep sleep. Jake sat in the hallway outside their room for an hour, listening to their steady breathing, feeling gratitude so profound it almost hurt. Around 9, his phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. How's the first night back going? Jake stepped outside onto his porch to call her. He could see lights on in her house next door. She answered on the first ring. They're asleep. Actually asleep. It's been 3 hours. Jake heard the smile in her voice. That's wonderful. I knew once the environment was fixed, everything else would follow. Sarah, I don't know how to thank you properly. You saved my daughters. There was a long pause. Then Sarah said quietly, you saved them, Jake. You put your pride aside and did what they needed. That takes real courage. The girls want you to come for dinner tomorrow. If you're free. Another pause. I'd love that. Jake leaned against the porch railing, looking at the desert sky full of stars. His phone buzzed with messages from his club brothers asking where he'd been. There was a meeting tomorrow night, important business that needed his attention. For 2 years, the club had been his entire identity outside of being a father. But things were different now. His priorities had shifted. The club would have to understand. Sarah, he said, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you really help us? The truth. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Because 3 years ago, When I was struggling alone with my daughter's problems, nobody helped me. Everyone was too busy, too uncomfortable, too afraid to get involved. I almost lost her because I was too proud to keep asking. I promised myself that if I ever saw another parent going through hell, I wouldn't look away, no matter how scary they seemed or how much they pushed back. Jake felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been frozen since the day his wife died. I'm glad you knocked on my door. Me too, Jake. Me too. 18 months later, the November air in Phoenix had that perfect crispness that made you remember why people loved the desert. Jake stood in his backyard, flipping burgers on the grill while watching his daughters play with Sarah's daughter, Maya, who was home from Arizona State University for Thanksgiving break. Emma and Lily had grown taller, stronger, more confident. They slept through every night now without fear. Their grades had improved dramatically. They joined soccer teams, made friends, started laughing at stupid jokes again. The dark circles under their eyes had vanished completely, replaced by the healthy glow of well-rested children. Sarah walked out of the house carrying a bowl of her famous potato salad, the recipe Maya had taught her from her college cooking class. She'd stopped renting the house next door 6 months ago, stopped pretending that the amount of time she spent at Jake's place was just about checking on the girls. The transition had been gradual, natural. Dinner invitations became weekly traditions. Weekly traditions became nightly routines. Sarah's toothbrush appeared in Jake's bathroom. Her coffee mug claimed a spot in his cabinet. Her laughter filled the spaces that had been empty for so long. Jake's club brothers had been skeptical at first. A Hell's Angel settling down with a pediatric sleep therapist wasn't exactly typical. But when they met Sarah, saw how she didn't flinch at their leather and tattoos, how she asked genuine questions about their bikes and their lives, they slowly accepted her. More than that, they respected what she'd done for Jake and his daughters. Tommy, Jake's oldest friend in the club, had pulled him aside at a barbecue last summer. She's good for you, brother. Haven't seen you smile like this in years. Don't mess it up. Jake had no intention of messing it up. Sarah had given him back something he'd thought was lost forever, hope. The belief that his family could be whole again, even if it looked different than before. Maya came running over, Emma and Lily trailing behind her. Uncle Jake, the girls say you used to be really scary. Is that true? Jake laughed, flipping a burger. I had my moments. He's still scary, Emma announced proudly, but only to bad guys. He protects people now. It was true. Jake had shifted his focus within the club, started working more with their community outreach programs. They organized charity rides for children's hospitals, ran toy drives for underprivileged kids, provided security for domestic violence shelters. Turned out there were lots of ways to use strength that didn't involve violence. Sarah slipped her hand into his, squeezing gently. The girls had started calling her by her first name months ago, but lately Lily had begun saying Sarah Mom when she forgot to catch herself. Nobody corrected her. Felt right. That evening, after Maya took the girls inside to watch a movie, Jake and Sarah sat on the back porch swing he'd installed last spring. The same swing where he'd asked her, terrified and stumbling over his words, if she'd consider making this permanent. Where she'd said yes before he could even finish the question. The engagement ring on her finger caught the porch light. Simple, elegant, with a small diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. They were planning a small wedding for next spring. Nothing fancy, just family, close friends, and the club brothers who'd become Sarah's extended family too. Remember that first night? Sarah asked, leaning her head on his shoulder. When I knocked on your door, Jake smiled. I thought you were insane. Some tiny woman confronting a Hell's Angel at 11 at night. I was terrified. But those screams, Jake, I couldn't ignore them. I'm glad you didn't. Jake kissed the top of her head. You saved us. All of us. We saved each other, Sarah corrected. You were brave enough to let me in. That's not easy for someone who spent years keeping everyone out. Inside, they could hear the girls laughing at something in the movie. Normal, happy sounds. The sounds of childhood as it should be. Jake thought about that desperate man he'd been 18 months ago. Alone, exhausted, watching his daughters suffer and feeling powerless. He thought about how close he'd come to giving up, to accepting that this was just how life would be now. But sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes it knocks on your door at 11 at night. Sometimes it refuses to look away when you try to push it back. Sometimes it shows you that strength isn't about carrying everything alone. It's about knowing when to let someone help carry the weight. The shadow people were gone. The house was full of light. And for the first time in years, Jake Miller could breathe.